There are nights in history that feel less like memories and more like lingering shadows, nights when a single candle flame can reveal the truth of a legend far better than any painting or royal proclamation. And if you walked the stone corridors of Whitehall Palace long after the courtiers had retired and the final prayers of the chapel had faded into silence, you would see her, moving slowly through the hush of the midnight chambers, her face glowing white beneath a crown of flickering light, her careful footsteps echoing like a ritual practiced for decades. Queen Elizabeth the Musser, Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, the woman who remade England through will alone, walked as if she were not entirely mortal, as if she were something else entirely, something constructed, something preserved, something terrified of being seen. Because Elizabeth understood from the moment she took the throne that her body was no ordinary body. It was not hers. It was England's. It was a symbol, a weapon, a myth she had to polish daily to keep doubt away. Every inch of her skin, every strand of hair, every fabric that touched her frame was part of that myth. And beneath the myth, hidden like a forbidden confession, was fear. The fear of aging, of weakness, of being touched, of being human. A fear inherited from a mother executed, a father who killed wives without hesitation, and a court ready to tear apart any monarch who dared show fragility. So Elizabeth crafted a new self, a self made of porcelain white skin, a self shaped by rituals instead of warmth, a self built through denial rather than indulgence, a self protected not by armor, but by performance. In Tudor England, cleanliness was not what it is now. People feared water as if it were a doorway to sickness. They believed disease drifted in the air like curses, clinging to moisture and sneaking into the body through pores opened by warm baths. Bathing was considered dangerous, weakening, foolish. The Queen, who could never show weakness, avoided it with a devotion that seemed almost sacred. Her baths were rare enough to be recorded as events. When they did occur, the effort was monumental. Heavy wooden tubs dragged across chambers, water boiled in cauldrons, maids carrying steaming pails and endless relay lines, scented herbs crushed into the water to mask the palace stench, entire hours spent ensuring her painted mask stayed intact even through the heat. But most days, most weeks, most months, she chose something else entirely. She chose cloth, linen shifts, dozens of them, soft as whispers and white as the persona she wore. She changed them constantly, twice a day, 3 times. On anxious days, even more. In an age without soap or plumbing, linen absorbed sweat, oils, and the human smells she could not permit to reach the court. Linen became her substitute for cleansing. Linen became her shield. Linen became the illusion of purity. But it did not wash the body. It masked it. It disguised it, just as everything else did. Imagine her at dawn, seated before the one mirror she allowed to remain uncovered, the pale winter light slipping through the narrow window as her attendants prepared the alchemical potions that would build her face for the day. Imagine the silence. Imagine the methodical breaths. Imagine the fear beneath her ribs as the first layer of ceruse, white lead, and vinegar touched her skin. It stung. It burned. It seeped into her pores. It cracked the surface of her face like frost cracking stone. But she did not flinch. Pain was irrelevant when image was the only truth that mattered. Servants dabbed the mixture across her cheeks, forehead, chin, the result transforming her into something otherworldly, a living statue carved from myth rather than flesh. Venetian cerus was poison, and she knew it. She felt the rashes forming, the sores deepening beneath the layers, the dryness turning her skin into parchment. But she also knew what the kingdom saw when she appeared on the balcony before her people, an ageless monarch, untouchable, immaculate, unblemished by fear or time. Water could wash away that illusion. Water could expose what lay beneath the mask, so she refused to let it. Instead, she summoned rose water, vinegar tinctures, crushed lavender, and herbal distillations that perfumed the air around her with a carefully curated scent of purity. The queen did not smell of sweat or sickness. She smelled of gardens and power. It was not hygiene, it was strategy, it was theater. And like all theater, it required constant control. Even her hair became a symbol rather than a truth. In her youth, it was famously red, bright, burnished, thick with life. But the decades of lead poisoning changed everything. Her scalp began to weaken, strands fell like autumn leaves, and eventually the vibrant crown she was known for became too fragile to display. But this was Elizabeth, not a woman who accepted change, not a queen who yielded. So she turned to wigs, towering constructions stiffened with sugar water, egg whites, starch, and powder. The hairline was glued down with sticky substances that caused burns. The weight pulled at her temples. The powder clung to the air like dust shaken from a tomb. Yet she wore them with pride, insisting that time itself had no right to touch her. Because Elizabeth of I was not building beauty, she was building immortality. And immortality does not sweat. Immortality does not age. Immortality never removes its armor. In private moments, rare, fleeting, she allowed only 1 or 2 trusted attendants to unfasten the wigs, carefully lifting them away to reveal the wounded, thinning scalp beneath. Those attendants were sworn to silence. Some said they feared her fury. Some said they pitied her. But all knew they were witnessing the truth behind the myth, the woman trembling inside the goddess. Imagine her then, the last candle flickering beside her bed as she ran her fingers over her raw skin, refusing to meet her own reflection, refusing to acknowledge the cost of the persona she carried like a kingdom on her back. She would whisper prayers, she would trace the lines of old scars, and she would remind herself again and again that she could never reveal this version of herself to the world. The court did not want a woman. The world did not want a woman. They wanted Gloriana, and Gloriana required sacrifice. So she walked her nightly corridors in moonlit white, a queen who refused to be human, a monarch who built her power not on strength, but on illusion, a ruler who traded cleanliness for immortality and vulnerability for a mask that could never be removed. This was not hygiene. This was not vanity. This was survival. This was theater. This was the making of a legend carved not from marble, but from layers of fear, paint, scent, cloth, and silence. And behind the silence was a woman who knew one truth better than any monarch before her. If she let them see the real her, the fragile her, the mortal her, then England might fall. So she hid herself away, behind linen, behind perfume, behind poisonous white paint, behind a myth she constructed so well that even she could no longer escape it. The queen who refused to be human, the queen who chose immortality over reality, the queen who became her own mask. And this was only the beginning of the ritual. There is a bitter truth hidden beneath the polished myths of empires. Sometimes the most powerful people in the world are undone, not by enemies, not by assassins, not by armies marching under foreign banners, but by the quiet seduction of their own habits. And if you entered the great halls of Elizabeth's court during the height of her reign, you would have been overwhelmed not by the scent of perfume or the rustle of silks, but by another presence entirely, a presence that glittered on banquet tables like snow made of diamonds, a presence so rare, so coveted, so intoxicating that it became the currency of kings. Sugar. To understand Elizabeth's downfall, you must begin with sweetness, because for her, sweetness was power. In a world where commoners tasted sugar once a year, if ever, the queen consumed it as freely as breath. It adorned her desserts, it coated her fruits, it sculpted her table displays into castles, swans, and mythical beasts. It flowed into tarts, biscuits, syrups, and medicinal cordials mixed with rose petals and spices. It was not simply food, it was spectacle. It was political theater. It was a reminder to everyone who entered her presence that she lived in a different reality than the world beneath her. But sweetness has a price carved slowly, silently, into the body. Imagine her at a winter feast, surrounded by candlelight reflecting off sugar sculptures, white pyramids decorated with gold leaf and tiny candied violets, sugared quinces sparkling like crystallized jewels, marzipan figures molded into the likenesses of foreign ambassadors. Imagine the musicians playing softly while the queen lifts a silver spoon to her lips, the sugar melting on her tongue, the taste of luxury intoxicating and absolute. She smiles. The court smiles back. No one notices the faint wince she hides behind her fan, the subtle shift in her posture, the ache blooming deep in her jaw. That ache was the beginning. For years she brushed her teeth with powders made of crushed sugar, honey, ash, and pumice, abrasive mixtures believed to whiten and polish, but which tore at the enamel like sandpaper grinding stone. She chewed sugared violets before audiences, drank syrup-thick medicinal tonics at night, and indulged in desserts so rich they would make modern dentists weep. Little by little, her teeth suffered the consequences of her empire's sweetest treasure. Visitors wrote about her smile with a mixture of fascination and discomfort. They described teeth that were not so fresh, a diplomatic phrasing that hid the truth. They spoke of how she pressed handkerchiefs to her mouth mid-conversation. They complained, quietly, cautiously, of her breath. By the 1590s, her teeth had blackened, broken, or disappeared entirely, leaving empty spaces her lips struggled to hide. But she would not allow a surgeon to remove the decayed ones. The pain was preferable to the humiliation of dentistry. She endured fevers, swelling, headaches, jaw tension so severe it made eating difficult. Some nights, she whispered prayers over a basin filled with water she would never use for washing. Her ladies-in-waiting recounted how she pressed her hands against her cheeks, fighting tears she refused to let fall. Queens do not cry. Queens endure. Yet, the decay did not diminish her status. It amplified it. Because in the twisted logic of Tudor culture, whatever the queen displayed became fashionable. And so, her court, terrified of appearing poor, terrified of appearing healthy enough to be mistaken for lower rank, began darkening their own teeth. Ladies smeared soot on their smiles. Gentlemen rubbed sugar paste onto their molars. Blackened teeth became the fashion of power, a symbol of excess, a symbol of privilege, a symbol of the wealthy body slowly rotting from the inside out. Imagine the scene. A hall full of nobles grinning with teeth stained black like coal, laughing through the sweet haze of candied almonds, imitating the queen's decay without a second thought. It is grotesque to us now, but to them it was loyalty, it was imitation, it was survival. In her presence, they mirrored her flaws as if they were virtues, because in a world built on performance, even rot could be regal, but rot carries a shadow. And in Elizabeth's private chambers, sweetness lost its luster. As her dental pain intensified, she grew irritable, withdrawn. She snapped at advisors, she avoided long dinners. Her smiles became tighter, rarer, more forced. Behind closed doors, she requested warm cloths, soaked in clove oil pressed to her gums, the scent of cloves filling the room with a melancholy, medicinal warmth. She refused to let anyone outside her inner circle know how much it hurt. Pain was weakness, and weakness was political death. There are accounts, quiet ones, whispered ones, of nights when she paced her chamber floors, unable to sleep, holding her jaw with both hands. At times, she lay awake until dawn, staring at the flickering ceiling shadows, wondering how a queen could command armies and conquer nations but remain powerless against her own mouth. Her physicians offered treatments, but most were either useless or brutal. tooth extraction in the 1500s was closer to torture than medicine. And Elizabeth, who had endured imprisonment, abandonment, betrayal, and the execution of her mother, feared this pain more than any battlefield. Perhaps it was because the pain was a reminder that she was still flesh, still mortal, still human beneath the layers of paint and power, and humanity was the one truth she could never allow the world to see. So she hid the decay behind her fan, behind her painted lips, behind her regal posture, behind the myth she constructed so meticulously. She forced her voice through clenched teeth at council meetings. She pressed scented pomanders to her nose to mask the taste of iron rising from her gums. She chewed ginger candies before speaking. She smiled only when absolutely necessary. And always, she reached for more sugar. It became both comfort and poison, both pleasure and torment, both symbol and sentence. And in the end, sugar became the perfect metaphor for her reign. A sweetness that dazzled the world, a sweetness that symbolized wealth and power, a sweetness that could not be questioned, yet a sweetness that hollowed her, weakened her, consumed her from within. The foreign ambassadors noted it, her ladies whispered about it, her doctors recorded it, but Elizabeth never admitted it, not once, not to anyone, because queens do not confess their wounds, queens do not reveal their fears, queens do not speak of the rot beneath the crown. Yet the rot was there, creeping beneath the enamel of the monarch who built an empire from illusion. And as the sweetness that elevated her began to betray her, Elizabeth learned a truth far darker than anything found in her political enemies or foreign threats. The body does not care about power. The body does not care about crowns. The body does not care about legends. And even a queen cannot rule over decay. This was sweetness at its most deceptive. This was beauty at its most dangerous. This was rot dressed in royal gold. And for Elizabeth, this was only the beginning of the unraveling, the start of the slow descent into the painted prison she would build to contain the truth her body refused to hide. There is a kind of prison that requires no stone walls, no iron bars, no shackles clamped around wrists or ankles. A prison built from something far more intimate, far more fragile, far more devastating, the human face. And by the time Queen Elizabeth reached the middle years of her reign, her face had become the most heavily guarded territory in all of England, fortified not by armies or fortresses, but by layers upon layers of poison, disguised as beauty, power, and divine right. She lived behind a mask she could never remove, a mask so carefully constructed that even she forgot where the woman ended and the monarch began. Imagine the early morning ritual. The servants enter quietly, carrying bowls of vinegar water, pots of ceruse, jars of mercury pigment, brushes, sponges, powders, oils, and embroidered cloths so soft they were never washed for fear of fraying. The air smells of vinegar and roses, a scent that lingers in the palace corridors like a ghost. Elizabeth sits perfectly still, her back straight, her eyes half-lidded, her face bare in the pale dawn light. It is the one moment of the day when she is truly unmasked, and no one is allowed to look directly at her. Then the transformation begins. Venetian ceruse, the deadliest cosmetic of the age, rests inside a small porcelain pot that once held medicinal ointments. Its surface is white, thick, chalky, with a sheen that glows almost unnaturally in the dim light. A sponge is dipped into the mixture. The first touch is cold, the second burns. By the third, her skin begins to tighten. Ceruse is lead mixed with vinegar, a substance that eats into the flesh even as it creates a flawless illusion. Elizabeth knows this. She feels it every morning, but she does not flinch. A queen cannot flinch. The attendants dab it across her forehead, her cheeks, her neck, smoothing it into an artificial porcelain surface. They cover the sores, the rashes, the peeling patches left behind by previous applications. They fill the cracks like masons repairing damaged stone. The paint hides everything: pain, age, fatigue, humanity itself. Elizabeth watches none of it. She stares forward as though looking at something her servants could never see. A younger version of herself, perhaps, untouched by fear, untouched by betrayal, untouched by the crown's relentless demands. She remembers the early portraits painted in her youth, when artists could still capture her true features, her natural complexion, her warm reddish gold hair. But those portraits were long forbidden now. She no longer allowed artists to paint from life. Instead, they followed face pattern templates, standardized images approved by the queen, frozen in time, immune to decay. A perfect queen, a timeless queen, a queen who did not age, no matter what the years took from her. After the cerus comes the rouge, a deep, unnatural red made from cinnabar or, when supplies ran low, powdered mercury mixed with plant dyes. The mercury pigment is deadly to inhale, lethal to ingest, and poisonous even upon contact. But it gives the lips their famous Tudor crimson, a color associated with vitality, power, and the theatrical glamour of monarchy. Elizabeth presses her lips together, absorbing the toxic powder without hesitation. The rouge sinks into the tiny cracks of her dry, damaged skin. She tastes the bitterness of metal. She feels the sting, but she continues, because this was not makeup. This was armor. Every stroke of paint, every layer of powder, every sheen of rouge was a wall built between herself and the world, a barrier that protected her from scrutiny, judgment, and most importantly, vulnerability. She knew that women in positions of power were devoured the moment they appeared weak. She had seen her mother condemned for her aging skin. She had seen her stepmothers mocked, discarded, or killed for their imperfections. She had seen the court tear apart any woman who dared show signs of fatigue, or fear, or fragility. She would not be next. Her beauty had never been about vanity. It had always been about survival. Yet the consequences were lethal. The lead seeped into her bloodstream, causing constant headaches, mood swings, memory lapses, and numbness in her extremities. The mercury inflamed her gums, triggered tremors, and damaged her nerves. The combined effect was slow poisoning, subtle but relentless, a kind of chemical betrayal happening beneath her skin every single day. But the more damage the makeup caused, the more she needed it to hide the damage. It became an impossible cycle, a perfect trap, a painted prison she trapped herself in, one stroke at a time. There were nights when the mask began to crumble under the heat of the chamber's torches. Her skin would crack, the paint would peel, the sores beneath would weep. Her attendants would freeze in horror, knowing that even glancing too long at her unpainted suffering could cost them their position or worse. Elizabeth would retreat to her private study, gripping the edges of her desk with white-knuckled hands, whispering through clenched teeth that she must endure, must continue, must never break. She forbade mirrors in most rooms. Only one remained in her presence, and even that was often kept covered with velvet. The woman in the mirror was not the queen the world believed in. The woman in the mirror was mortal, and mortality was her greatest fear. There were nights when she sat before that covered mirror, her fingers trembling, as she lifted the cloth an inch, then lowered it again, terrified of seeing what the years had done to her, terrified of seeing the cost of her own legend, terrified of seeing Anne Boleyn's fate reflected in her own eyes, a woman dismantled by the same court she once dazzled. Elizabeth believed that showing her true, unpainted face could unravel her authority, so she built her reign on the illusion of eternal youth. When foreign ambassadors met her, they saw the mask, not the truth. When courtiers bowed before her, they smelled roses and vinegar, not sores and decay. When artists painted her, they copied the mask of youth, not the wounded skin beneath. And in this illusion, she found her greatest power and her deepest suffering, because every morning she rebuilt the same mask that slowly destroyed her. Every morning, she rehearsed the same performance that kept her throne secure. Every morning, she added another layer to the prison that tightened around her like invisible chains. Her attendants saw glimpses. They saw her shake when she stood too quickly. They saw her hands tremble when she reached for a quill. They saw her forget names she once spoke with ease. They saw the toll that years of lead and mercury took on her body. But they also saw her determination, fierce, stubborn, unbreakable, to continue being the monarch the world demanded. A queen who could not age, a queen who could not falter, a queen who could not be human. And when she performed before the court, illuminated by hundreds of candles reflecting off her white-painted skin, she became something else entirely. A figure of myth, a creature of legend, a monarch sculpted from artifice, a goddess draped in poison and silk. This was Elizabeth at her most powerful. This was Elizabeth at her most trapped. This was Elizabeth inside the painted prison she built to save herself and could never escape. Because beneath the layers of white and red was a woman who feared the world would never love her unless she remained flawless. And the tragedy, the dark beauty of her life, is that she was right. The mask kept her throne. The mask built her legend. The mask devoured her. And in the end, the mask became her. There is a final chapter in the life of every monarch, a moment when the golden illusions that once dazzled the world begin to flicker and dim, and the truth, the raw, unpainted truth, presses against the edges of the myth like a trapped shadow begging to be seen. And for Queen Elizabeth I, that final chapter began not with battles or betrayals or foreign threats, but with something far more ordinary, far more human, far more humiliating. Her own body, her failing body, a body she had spent a lifetime disguising beneath silk, paint, perfume, and ceremony. A body she refused to acknowledge, even as it slowly unraveled under the weight of years, poison, superstition, and fear. To understand the tragedy of Elizabeth's last years, you must start beneath the palace itself, in the labyrinth of foul-smelling tunnels and stone-lined cesspits where waste gathered in the bowels of the royal household. The Tudor court was beautiful from afar, but its beauty sat atop filth so overwhelming that foreign visitors wrote of the stench long before they wrote of the Queen's grace. The Thames was a dumping ground. The palace walls absorbed centuries of smoke, sweat, rot, and human refuse. At night, gong farmers dragged buckets of waste through narrow passages lit only by lanterns, their boots sloshing through mud mixed with things no monarch dared imagine. Elizabeth knew this world existed. She knew it beneath her feet. She knew it in the air she breathed. She knew it in the corridors where perfume clashed with decay like two armies in endless battle. And so she waged her own war, not against foreign enemies this time, but against the scent of mortality itself. Perfume was her weapon. Her chambers overflowed with rose water, lavender oil, crushed violets, bergamot, ambergris, musk, rosemary vinegar, and pomanders stuffed with scented herbs that hung from ropes of silk at her waist. Servants burned sweetwood in braziers to cleanse the air. Gloves soaked in perfumed oils became one of her trademarks. Gifts she distributed to ambassadors as symbols of elegance and refinement. Every garment she wore was steeped in scent. Every room she entered carried her aura long after she left it. Because fragrance was not luxury. It was protection. It was camouflage. It was denial. And beneath the layers of perfume lay the truth she could never let the court smell. Her fear of bathing had grown into a near religious conviction. When her physicians reminded her of her rare bathing schedule, she replied with the quiet firmness of a monarch who would not be challenged. I take a bath once a month, whether I need it or not. Water, to her, was danger. Hot water weakened the body. Steam opened the skin. Moisture carried disease. Bathing washed away the paint, the ceruse, the rouge, washed away the very image that held the kingdom together. So she remained dry. Her skin, already poisoned by lead, grew stiff, cracked, powdered with layers upon layers of perfume and starch. Beneath her wigs, her scalp was raw, scarred from years of irritation. Her hair, once vibrant, now came out in clumps, leaving her with patches of baldness that wounded her pride far more deeply than any political slight. But she did not retreat. She adapted. Wigs became her crown within the crown, stiffened with sugar water and egg whites, powdered to hide the thinning hair beneath. Each wig was a towering construction of artifice and symbolism. Some bore jewels, some bore ribbons, some bore small golden ornaments that glittered beneath candlelight like stars trapped in her hair. These wigs grew heavier as the years passed. Heavier still when she refused to leave her chambers without them, even on days when she struggled to lift her head. Her servants whispered that the weight of the wigs made her neck ache, that she often sat perfectly still to hide the tremor caused by the pain, that when she removed them, which was rare, she begged the attendants not to look upon her bare scalp, because she could not bear the thought of their pity, or worse, their disgust. And while the court perceived her as radiant, they did not know what happened behind closed doors as the masks and wigs and perfumes collapsed one by one each night, leaving behind a woman exhausted by her own legend. In her final years, Elizabeth began to avoid daylight. She preferred candle-lit halls where shadows softened the cracks in her makeup and dimmed the sharpness of her aging features. She forbade mirrors, insisting that attendants remove them or keep them draped in velvet. The woman who once commanded portraits and pageantry now trembled at the thought of seeing her own reflection. Her memory began to falter. Her moods turned volatile. She forgot meetings. She forgot names. She forgot promises. Some nights she walked the corridors in silence, touching the walls as if grounding herself in the stone she trusted more than her own trembling hands. Her physicians knew the truth. Her body was failing. The poison she wore like armor had seeped so deeply into her veins that even rest could not save her. But she refused rest. She refused sleep. She refused surrender. She refused death. When her ladies-in-waiting begged her to lie down, she shook her head with stubborn defiance. "Must is a word not to be used to princes," she whispered, echoing the pride that defined her life. She believed that if she slept, the illusion might slip from her and never return. So she sat on cushions, on carpets, on the cold stone of her chamber floor, for days, for nights, for hours that melted into one another until no one could say when the queen had last truly slept. Her skin grew gray beneath the paint. Her lips cracked beneath the rouge. Her breath weakened. Her eyes lost their fire. But still, she refused to remove her mask. She refused to be seen as mortal. She refused to let the myth die before she did. And then, at last, the moment came. Elizabeth, alone, except for a handful of trembling attendants, allowed her body to sink onto a pile of cushions beside her bed. They lifted her gently. They laid her down. She did not resist. For the first time in decades, she surrendered to gravity. And when she breathed her final breath, the mask remained. It was only after her death, when the doors were closed, when the servants wept, when the court held its breath in stunned silence, that her ladies removed her wig, wiped away the paint, washed the face no one had seen for half a century. What they revealed was not a queen, not a goddess, not the immortal Gloriana she had presented to the world. They revealed a woman, a tired woman, a wounded woman, a woman who had spent her entire life fighting to be anything but human. Her skin was scarred, her scalp was bare, her lips were cracked, her breath had long ago grown shallow under the weight of the poison she carried. And yet, in that still moment, stripped of artifice, stripped of myth, stripped of perfume and paint, she looked at peace, as if the mask she carried for a lifetime had finally loosened its grip and allowed the woman beneath it to return to herself. This was Elizabeth's final truth, a truth she never allowed the world to see while she lived. She had ruled as an icon, she had commanded as a legend, she had survived as a myth, but she died as a woman, and the world, at last, met her.